woman's frozen body lay curled in a cave clutching a deer-toothed peasant that had been carved with impossible precision. 20,000 years after her death, scientists would extract her DNA from that peasant and discover something that changed everything we thought we knew about the Ice Age. Because this woman wasn't some primitive cave dweller, barely scraping by, she was part of the most sophisticated survival network the world had ever seen. 26,000 years ago, Earth tried to kill every human alive. The planet became a frozen wasteland where temperatures dropped 15 colder than today's worst winters. Ice sheets buried entire continents. The air itself turned toxic, with 25 times more dust than we breathe now. Most animals went extinct, but humans looked at the apocalypse and said, "Old my bone needle." You see, when archaeologists started digging into Ice Age sites, they expected to find the usual story: desperate people muddling around fires, gnawing on scraps, barely surviving day to day. Instead, they found evidence of the most incredible technological revolution in human history. These people weren't just surviving the Ice Age, they were engineering their way through it. At a site called On a River in northern Siberia, researchers uncovered something that broke their understanding of prehistoric life. Written in permafrost were needle cases, not just one or two crude tools, but organized storage systems containing 192 perfectly drafted-eyed needles. Each needle was precision drilled from carefully selected animal bones: box bones for flexibility, lin bones for strength hair, bones for fine detail work. His wasn't primitive craftsmanship. When scientists examined these needles under electron microscope, they found manufacturing technique that wouldn't look out of place in a modern factory. The eye holes were perfectly circular, drilled with tools that left microscopic spiral patterns. The points were shaped and polished to surgical sharpness. These people had invented industrial-scale clothing production 30,000 years before anyone thought to plant a seed. But here's where it gets crazy. They weren't just making clothes, they were making layer clothing, systems, fitted undergarments beneath outer garments. They invented underwear. In the Ice Age, when most of Europe was buried under glanders, these humans were walking around in custom-tailored survival suits that would make modern Arctic gear look primitive. The needles tell only part of the story. It Kolivistonis in what's now the Czech Republic. People were firing the world's first ceramics while woolly mammoths still roamed outside their doors. They were creating Venus figures with artistic detail that rivals anything from the Renaissance. But the most shocking discovery was their architecture. 15,000 years ago, at a place called Majurek in Ukraine, humans built something that defied every assumption about Stone Age capabilities. Using the bones of 149 mammoth, they constructed elaborate dwellings with fitted ivory joints, suspended floors for air circulation, and strategic heating systems. His wasn't a shelter. His was engineering. The structure at Majurek spanned 40 feet in diameter. The walls rise 12 feet high, built with interlocking mammoth skull and leg bones arranged in precise geometric patterns. Passive mammoth turks serve as structural supports, joined together with carved ivory sleeves that fit so perfectly you couldn't slide a knife blade between them. Inside, they created separate rooms with different functions, storage areas, workshop spaces, even what appears to be a nursery. Think about what this means. To build this structure, they needed to hunt and process at least 95 different mammoth. They needed to transport bones weighing hundreds of pounds across miles of frozen terrain. They needed to understand load-bearing calculations. Thermodynamic and architectural engineering required tiers of workers coordinate planning and months of construction time. But the most mind-blowing part, this wasn't an emergency shelter thrown together during a desperate winter. Evidence shows these mammoth bone houses were permanent settlements occupied for decades. Multiple generations lived in these structures, making repairs and improvements over time. While most of the world was frozen solid, these people were building cities. Now did they organize projects? This massive. The answer came from an unexpected source. When scientists started mapping where Ice Age tools and materials came from, they discovered something incredible. Saw materials were traveling hundreds of miles. Obsidian from volcanic regions showed up in settlements 300 meters away. Seashells from Mediterranean reaches made it to cases in Central Europe. Amber from the Baltic Sea reached settlements near the Black Sea. His wasn't random, wondering, his was trade. Organized, systematic long-distance trade network that spanned entire continents. During the worst climate crisis in human history, people were maintaining economic relationships across distances that would challenge modern logistics. The scale of these networks is staggering. Archaeologists found spondylus shells from the NT in settlements near the English Channel. That's a 3. Zeros and me journey, requiring coordination between dozens of different groups. Someone had to harvest the shells. Someone had to transport them across mountain ranges and river systems. Someone had to negotiate passage through territories controlled by other tribes, and someone had to find communities willing to trade valuable resources for decorative shells. But the real breakthrough in understanding Ice Age society came in 23 when scientists achieved something that sounds like science fiction. They extracted human DNA from a 20,000-year-old deer-tooth peasant found in Denisova Cave. For the first time in history, they could connect a specific prehistoric tool to the actual person who owned it. The peasant belonged to a woman. The DNA analysis revealed she had strong genetic ties to ancient North Eurasian populations, showing that even 20,000 years ago, people were maintaining genetic connections across vast distances. But here's what shocked the researchers. The peasant showed evidence of being worn regularly, suggesting it wasn't just decoration, it was identification, a way to show which network you belonged to when you encountered strangers hundreds of miles from home. His changes everything about how we picture Ice Age life. These weren't isolated tribes barely scraping by. They were members of continental social network with their own identification systems, trade protocol, and cooperative agreements. When someone needed obsidian for tools or shells for ceremony, they knew exactly who to contact and how to reach them. The cooperation went deeper than trade. At sites across Europe and Asia, archaeologists found evidence of coordinate hunting expeditions between different groups. Mammoth kill sites show bothering patterns from multiple cultural traditions working side by side. Have art projects that required years to complete show artistic style from different regions combined in single locations. Even the most isolated settlements contain materials and technique that could only have come from active information exchange with distant communities. But how did they coordinate all this activity? The answer lies in something even more remarkable than their technology or their trade network. These people had fundamentally retired their own biology. Recent genetic analysis revealed that Ice Age populations developed specific physiological adaptations for extreme cold survival, enhanced lung capacity for processing thin, frigid air, cardiovascular changes that improved circulation, to extremities mitochondrial adaptations that let their cells extract more energy from limited food supplies. Where's the incredible part? These weren't random evolutionary changes that took thousands of generations. These were target adaptations that appeared within centuries of the Ice Age beginning. Somehow these populations were accelerating their own evolution in response to environmental pressure. The key was metallic efficiency. While their Neanderthal cousins had robust, powerful build that required 40 more calories to maintain Ice Age, humans evolved to do more with less. Smaller frames that needed less food, more efficient digestive systems that extracted maximum nutrition from available resources, brains that could solve complex problems while using minimal energy. His metallic advantage became crucial when the Ice Age reached its peak 21,000 years ago. At that moment, Earth's temperature hit its absolute minimum. Ice core data shows temperatures 15 colder than today's Arctic T levels, dropped 400 feet. Atmospheric dust levels soared so high that sunlight barely penetrated to the surface. Most large animals went extinct. Even the mighty Neanderthals, who had survived hundreds of thousands of years of climate changes, finally succumbed to conditions too extreme for their high metabolism lifestyle. But humans looked at the apocalypse and innovated their way through it, it seemed have. In Israel, they had already developed controlled fire technology that reached temperatures of 500. They weren't just keeping warm. They were running sophisticated chemical processes, heating birch bark to create waterproof adhesive processing plant materials to extract fibers for rope and clothing, creating the world's first preserved foods by storing deer bone marrow in skin container for up to 9 weeks. Think about that for a moment. While most of the world was frozen solid, these people were running. What amounts to ancient laboratories, they understood that autumn-stored marrow lasted 9 weeks, while spring-stored marrow spoiled after 3 weeks. They knew which hardwoods burned hottest and which softwoods created the least smoke. They could predict seasonal weather patterns months in advance and plan their resource management accordingly. The sophistication of their food preservation technology rivals anything achieved before the modern era. They discovered that keeping deer leg bones intact with skin-preserved marrow longer than any other storage method. They learned to time their hunting to minimize preservation periods. They developed rotation systems that ensured fresh nutrition throughout the winter months. But perhaps the most incredible aspect of Ice Age survival was what happened when multiple human species competed for the same resources. Archaeological evidence shows that Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans all occupied overlapping territories during the Ice Age. Peak, all 3 species had sophisticated tool technologies. All 3 had mastered fire. All 3 lived in organized social groups, met. Only modern humans survived. Why? The answer isn't what you'd expect. Neanderthals were stronger, more cold-adapted, and had larger brains. Denisovans were equally intelligent and had genetic adaptations for high-altitude survival. But modern humans had something neither of their competitors possessed: the ability to cooperate with strangers. When resources became scarce during the Ice Age, peak Neanderthals and Denisovans competed primarily within their own family groups. Modern humans formed alliances between unrelated communities. When one group's hunting grounds froze over, they had back option hundreds of miles away. When one community's tool-making materials ran out, they could trade with distant partners who had surplus supplies. His cooperative advantage compounded over time. Communities that shared information survived better than communities that hoarded secrets. Groups that welcomed refugees had larger populations and more genetic diversity. Networks that maintained trade relationships had access to resources that isolated groups could never obtain. By 20,000 years ago, modern humans had created something unprecedented in evolutionary history. A continent-spanning civilization that could survive conditions no individual community could endure alone. When local disasters struck one settlement, the network provided support. When new technologies emerged in one region, they spread rapidly to communities thousands of miles away. The woman with the deer-tooth peasant was part of this network. Her DNA shows genetic connections to populations across northern Eurasia, proving that even in the depths of the Ice Age, people were maintaining contact across distances that would challenge modern transportation. Her peasant wasn't just jewel, it was proof of membership in humanity's first global civilization. His is what allowed humans to survive the impossible. Not superior strength, or bigger brains, or better tools. Cooperation, the willingness to help strangers, the insight that everyone survives better when everyone survives together. When Earth's climate stabilized and the Ice Age ended, these cooperative networks became the foundation for everything that followed. Agriculture spread along the same trade routes that Ice Age hunters had used to exchange obsidian and shells. Cities arose at locations where Ice Age communities had gathered for seasonal cooperation. Written language developed to manage the same kind of long-distance relationships that Ice Age people had maintained through oral tradition and symbolic objects. The last facial maximum didn't break humanity. It forged us into the species we are today, those frozen nights. 26,000 years ago, when our ancestors looked at an impossible situation and chose cooperation over competition, innovation over resignation, hope over despair, made us who we are. Very time, modern humans face a crisis and choose to work together rather than fight each other. We're chanting the spirit of that woman with the deer tooth, peasant. Very time we share knowledge instead of hoarding it. We're honoring the Ice Age innovations who created humanity's first global civilization. The oldest night in human history wasn't our darkness hour. It was the moment we learned that together humans can survive.